Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The president just unveiled a three-stage plan for reopening America and saving our spiraling economy. What's in it? Well, we'll have details in just a minute. But first tonight, an update to a story we've been following for months on this show. From the earliest days of the coronavirus outbreak, honest people who are paying attention noticed something strange about this epidemic. This mysterious new virus did not arise in the way you'd think it might from some obscure, lightly populated place, an African rainforest or a remote Indian village. It came instead from the middle of a city of 11 million people, Wuhan, China. Now, you may never have heard of Wuhan, but it was well known to researchers around the world because it was home and is home to one of only a few dozen advanced level 4 biolabs on the planet. The Wuhan laboratory was used for research on some of the deadliest pathogens known to man. As it happens, this facility was not far from the so-called wet market where the coronavirus supposedly originated. Kind of an amazing coincidence if you think about it. Was it actually a coincidence, or was there a connection between the research lab and the outbreak? It seemed like a question worth asking. Unfortunately, we live in a political climate in which asking questions is greatly discouraged and obedience is prized. And so speculation about this remained private, mostly online. And then in February, Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas said it out loud.
A few miles away from that food market is China's only biosafety level 4 super laboratory that researches human infectious diseases. Now, we don't have evidence that this disease originated there, but because of China's duplicity and dishonesty from the beginning, we need to at least ask the question to see what the evidence says. We have such laboratories ourselves in the United States run by our military, in large part done for preventative purposes or trying to discover vaccines or to protect our own soldiers.
Well, of course, everything about Tom Cotton's questions, the one you just saw, were valid. Was there a connection between the lab and the virus? We ought to see where the evidence leads, as he said. But the people who are paid to follow the evidence refused to do that, and instead they mocked Cotton as a paranoid lunatic. On CNN, serial plagiarist Fareed Zakaria dismissed Cotton as a, quote, far-right conspiracist. Zakaria compared Cotton's entirely legitimate questions to Soviet disinformation for the 1980s that claimed the CIA invented AIDS.
Tom Cotton, one of Donald Trump's staunchest allies in the Senate, suggested that the virus might have originated in a high-security biochemical lab in China. In the 1980s, I remember when the far left trafficked in rumors about HIV having been invented in CIA labs. The far right has now found its own virus conspiracy theory.
What a mediocrity. What a slander. Over at NBC, famed journalist Brian Williams also refused to engage in journalism. Rather than spend 10 minutes learning about the subject and making up his own mind, Williams simply joined the herd of other dumb people mocking a story they didn't understand.
Cotton has been criticized by public health professionals for giving just the whiff of credibility there on television and on social media to a conspiracy theory going around that the coronavirus originated and was perhaps man-made inside a lab in China, perhaps even as a bioweapon, and was released either intentionally or unintentionally deployed. There is no evidence to support that.
There is no evidence to support that. Sounds authoritative. Actually, Brian Williams had no idea what he was talking about. At the time he said that, the evidence indeed was accumulating. The Wuhan wet market they're always citing, it turns out it didn't even sell the variety of bats that carry COVID-19. Those bats were hundreds of miles away. A group of Chinese researchers confirmed this fact in January when they interviewed 59 people who worked in the market or shopped there. And that information was widely available. It was online when Williams made what he calls his broadcast and issued the airy dismissal you just saw. He just didn't bother to read any of it. None of them did. Tonight, Williams and all the little robots like him owe you an apology. Fox's special reporters confirmed that government sources with access to highly classified intelligence, informed people, believe this virus did in fact originate in the biolab in Wuhan. The first infected patient was likely a lab employee who accidentally contracted the virus and then spread it to the rest of the world. That wet market theory, it was just a cover. China pushed that story to Western media to deflect blame from itself, and of course our press corps, as they always do, ate it up immediately. We still do not know conclusively this virus escaped from a lab in Wuhan. But tonight we can say with ample evidence that it is the most plausible explanation for the epidemic now wrecking our country. And that's a big story. Why didn't we know this sooner? Well, there is a specific reason for that. The people who bring you the news were lying about it, and they were covering for China. In February, the New York Times announced that Senator Tom Cotton repeats fringe theory of coronavirus origins. According to the Washington Post, quote, Tom Cotton keeps repeating a coronavirus conspiracy theory that was already debunked. Really? By whom? On March 5th, Vox.com weighed in, quote, rumor is the coronavirus started in a Chinese lab. Here's how we know it didn't. In their signature smug, haranguing tone, Vox said, quote, on Fox News and social media, a dangerous conspiracy theory about the origin of coronavirus won't die. Why was it dangerous? They never explained. As proof the coronavirus could not have escaped from that lab in Wuhan, Vox said that the lab had the same safety protocols as top American labs, meaning naturally the virus just couldn't escape. It was unthinkable to them that maybe China's safety practices might be different from ours and perhaps inferior. This is mindless, this is dishonest, this is infuriating. This story matters. They intentionally obscured it. In fact, State Department emails from 2018, 2 years ago, reveal that the Wuhan lab had disastrous safety practices. Even then, American officials worried that a deadly virus might escape from that lab due to Chinese incompetence. They put that on paper. But Vox, meanwhile, was quoting the World Health Organization's Bruce Aylward to assure you that any such talk was crazy and immoral and probably racist. This is the same Bruce Aylward, by the way, who has now become a professional shill for the government of China. In one interview that we played a couple weeks ago, Aylward refused even to acknowledge the existence of the nation of Taiwan. Why? Because his masters in Beijing might disapprove. Vox's article on the Wuhan lab ended this way, quote, we'll need to be patient for Chinese investigators to get to the bottom of it. Right. Let's let China do the reporting for us because they're objective. It's hard to believe any of this is real, but it is real, and we shouldn't be surprised by it. These are dogmatic defenders of the Chinese government posing as American journalists. They're the very same people who promote travel bans to North Carolina, then fly off to Beijing for green energy conferences. These are the ones who run Central Committee press releases as news, as CNN did yesterday, and kill stories critical of the Chinese government, as Bloomberg has more than once. They censor movies and silence their own employees to keep China happy. Hollywood specializes in that. And they filled our universities with the offspring of Chinese oligarchs, displacing our own children. They've outsourced our prosperity across the Pacific Ocean, and they've gotten rich while doing it. So, of course, they're repeating China's lies about this pandemic. They've been training for this for years. Will they be punished? We don't know, but remember their names. You should also remember the people who told the truth about all of this when it was unfashionable to do so.